Ah, it's so tiny. There we go. There we go. There we go. It's reading time with Sarah. Time to read. Because reading is fundamental. Hey, Alec, how are you? With a little bit of Hello, Paul. How are you today? We're continuing with our reading of this. Do better. Do better. Because I only have a half hour, and so we are going to do it. So don't miss my goal. Right? Right. So set my timer for 30 minutes. And that's perfect because then I gotta get out of here because I got me a date. Okay. Chapter 3, White Supremacy starts within. Your willingness to look at your darkness is what empowers you to change. Ileana Van Zandt. In 1851, Sojourner Truth gave what is known as the Ain't I a Woman speech, a rallying decree calling on the white community to consider her doubly oppressed experience living at the intersection of being both black and a woman. Over 160 years, black, indigenous, and women of color around the world are still forced to ask this same damn question. We are still fighting for the right to be recognized, respected, and supported because white supremacy continues to censor us, to abuse us, and to attempt our complete eradication. Racial justice activists and anti-racism education have erupted in popular culture, particularly following the violent murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Nina Pop, Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, and so many more black folks. Unfortunately, that list has grown since this book was written. Be it police or vigilantes, as revealed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Still, we are enduring deepening racial inequities from global health crisis, an influx of performative allyship from individuals and corporations alike, and the attempted whitewashing of the Black Lives Matter movement. We are mired in personal and collective race-based grief, yet there is still an inability to create lasting, meaningful change despite good intentions. So how do we acknowledge and address the white supremacist status quo? Where can we learn steps for creating lasting solutions? What tools are required for our collective healing? What white supremacy creates grief and loss for all people, albeit in different ways. To address and process the opposition that we observe and experience out in the world, we need to first take a long, sobering exploration inside our own universe. White supremacy is undoubtedly a systematic issue, but it starts in the hearts and minds of men, women, and children, usually white ones. Often when we think of white supremacy and racism, we think of an external, overt acts of harm. We picture the Yazidis in Germany, or the word, the N-word, with the hard R, leaving someone's lips in disdain, which is exactly what we think of. We imagine tangible and egregious, thank you, dear. Egregious actions that we can point to and say that is racist, but we'll learn as we'll learn that ain't the way white supremacy usually works. White supremacy starts within because the broader social systems that create institutions of oppression started within, in the hearts and minds of white folks who disseminated this ideology across all races and gender identities. White supremacy is taught, learned, and absorbed from birth, if not before. There are numerous doll test studies where both white and black children as young as 3 years old affiliate white skin with as prettier, cleaner, and or better than dark skin. Both black and white toddlers are alike exhibit a strong internalized preference for whiteness, and this bias remains through adulthood. Since white supremacy is part and parcel of the global status quo, it infiltrates every aspect of who we are and how we view the world and our place within it. Consciously and unconsciously, racism, internalized oppression, and white supremacy are part of our collective genetic makeup and the thread composing the layered fabric of our global tapestry. They are insidious by design, so much so that we are often incapable of recognizing, let alone naming them, even and often, especially, when they exist within ourselves. And make no mistakes here, beloveds, racism is housed within every white person on the planet. Internalized oppression affects all black, indigenous, and people of color, and all white folks and non-black people of color uphold anti-blackness. All humans are prone to perpetuating white supremacy because white supremacy is the status quo. There is a time and a place for logic and academic analysis, but when it comes to healing the chasm that is the racial divide and creating understanding across ethnic, cultural, and racial lines, we must do so from our heart as well as from our mind. Education alone is not enough. If it were, I would still need to repeat the same shit as Harriet Tubman, Marsha P. Johnson, or Malcolm X. We must learn to tolerate the challenging and conflicting emotions that arise when we address racism and white supremacy. Emotions like grief, guilt, anger, shame, hope, anxiety, relief, fear, and sadness, to name a few. We must acclimate our body to withstand our own discomfort and shower ourselves in compassion so that we have a shot at bestowing that same compassion on others, particularly queer and trans, black, and indigenous women, who are the most marginalized by race and gender identity oppression. Withstanding our discomfort also requires understanding that discomfort is necessary and a constant part of the work. Our goal is not to feel comfortable, because we won't. It is to better tolerate the discomfort that inherently arises, no matter your race, unless and until the violent and uncomfortable truths of white supremacy have resonated through your every cell. You will be unmotivated and ill-equipped to take the lifelong, daily, and demanding actions required to dismantle all systems of oppression as they exist within and outside of ourselves, to create a world where humans can finally breathe easy. White supremacy is one of the greatest forms of collective social trauma in the world. Failing to address race-based grief faced by all humans is a failure to heal our personal and collective pain, and our healing will be the revolution. Racism is an inside job. Okay, let me say that again, because this resonates with what we talked about last night, that our healing will be the revolution. Okay, hang on. I gotta process that for a second. Because we're always looking for an assignment. We're always looking for something to do. We're always looking for an external show, something a task. But really, the revolution is inside us. It has nothing to do with tasks. It has everything to do with actually doing what they say the work is, which is examining how white supremacy has affected me personally, has affected you personally, has infiltrated the way that we see the world, the way we walk through the world, the way we interact with each other, the way we raise our children. All of that, all of it comes back to that. And that is the revolution. Racism is an inside job because we cannot heal what we refuse to reveal. Where white women and racism go wrong, because we get it wrong every time. Time and time again, I encounter well-intentioned white women who want to commit to racial justice, but who have fooled themselves into believing that racism only exists outside of themselves and their direct and immediate control. Well, I'm here to call bullshit. The truth is that white supremacy starts within, and therefore all anti-racism efforts must as well. At least any efforts that have a hope in hell of creating substantive change. Oh my God, words are hard sometimes. Substantive change. It can be easy to think you are doing the work solely by addressing the things outside of the four corners of your physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being, but it is a lie. A ruse you have been sold by a capitalist system that wants you to stay busy and bothered so that you do not and cannot recognize the larger system for what it is. Hi, darling. Racist, oppressive, and stacked against anyone who doesn't belong to the dominant groups. First, it is vital that we address what doing the work in racial justice context even means, because we do not know that definition. We've gotten it wrong. I've gotten it wrong. Every single time I try to define it, I get it so wrong. I'm missing the mark every time. To use a garden as a metaphor, and forgive me here because I'm nobody's gardener, it is pulling up your sleeves and getting your elbows dirty, pulling out the weeds. Is it nourishing the seedlings you've planted so that they have what they need to thrive? Or is it being with yourself so you better understand the ins and outs of how the garden usually actually functions, and how your personal experiences and ideologies are influencing every garden-related action, and thus the well-being of the garden itself? I believe it's all of the above, but we can effectively weed away the hate or nourish those who have been subjected to it without first understanding the intricacies of the ecosystem you're working in and how you contribute to its existence. You dig? Garden joke. When I ask white women what they're doing to address racial injustice, be it in my workshops or on the interwebs, I routinely receive answers that allude to a racist world and ideology that exists entirely separate from them, their actions or inactions, and their worldview. It is tempting and intentional mirage created to other themselves from the white supremacist issue and the ills that it causes BIPOC individuals, whom it was constructed to oppress. How convenient. But in the words of Randy Jackson, it is a no for me, dog.
Okay.
It's a no for me, dog. American Idol. Boy, that was a long time ago, huh? I don't have time for this self-aggrandizing line of fake reasoning. Too many black folks are dying. And when I receive common white answers in response to the "what are you doing" query, like posting about anti-racism educators on Instagram, attending a rally, or donating to mutual aid, it can be hard for me to keep my cool. These are all important and appreciated acts, but they miss the most critical mark, addressing the ways in which you, as an individual, perpetuate white supremacy day in and day out. When you head out into the world in the hopes of taking tangible actions to mitigate discrimination, but have failed first to address the ways in which you have and continue to participate, thank you, Gemini, in the very oppression you are seeking to eradicate, you perpetuate more of the same. You operate from the oppressive systems socially encoded into your DNA and ignore your power, privilege, and violence that ensues when you are ill-prepared to illuminate and remedy your shadows. In sum, you cause harm. In no small measure. I am a queer black woman, and I face many oppressions. I'm on chapter 2. Thank you for asking. In no small measure, I'm a queer black woman, and I face many oppressions as a result of that intersecting identity. And I also hold many privileges as a cisgendered, light-skinned, multiracial, Canadian, English-speaking, highly educated, neurotypical, non-disabled, financially secure, thin, young-ish person in a heterosexual passing marriage.
Me too.
You too? Except for the queer black woman part?
And the Canadian.
And the Canadian.
And the thin.
Yeah.
And the yeah.
Yep. It is my work to unearth and address my own privileges so that I can cause less harm to those who I oppress. To acknowledge my status as an oppressor. White women need to do the same, but y'all are struggling. Yeah, we are. Because we always want to be the most oppressed. We tend to go into oppression Olympics. Who has the most oppression? We're so take care of us. Please, please. White women and non-black people of color are also prone to telling me how much they support me and my work while failing to engage in daily personal racial justice or black liberation education or efforts themselves.
Yeah.
This itself is an act of white supremacy and anti-blackness. Let me be real clear. It is utterly impossible to support me or any of the work I do when you aren't actively participating in racial justice and addressing anti-blackness within yourself. Full stop. How precisely are you supporting me or advancing racial justice when you can't even acknowledge that you are implicated in the oppressive systems of whiteness to which you belong and perpetuate simply by being white or benefiting from whiteness as a non-black person of color? How can you help heal the collective divide when you refuse to heal your own race-based hurts as a mean to hold compassionate space for the harms you and white supremacy have and continue to inflict on black indigenous women? The answer is simple: you can't. Any belief or intention to exclude your own actions or inactions is performative at best and deeply destructive at worst.
Huh? What?
Would you grab me a cherry coke?
Yeah.
White supremacy shows its face in a myriad of ways, one of which is the belief that the individual white people are miraculously outside the collective global structures of white supremacy. I'm not racist. I have black friends. Ha ha ha. This is white exceptionalism, and it is a farce. Straight up, it is impossible to address racism in an authentic way without addressing yourself. It is the harm you have caused, the grief and loss that white supremacy inherently creates for all.
One more thing, I'll leave you alone.
If we want
Will you grab
to,
me a Snickers?
right, so much performative activism and
in the
destruction.
bottom.
Yep.
Okay.
We go right to the list. We go right to, tell me what I should do. Give me my list of to-dos, and then let me check it off. Because then it's like, yay, I did it. Participation done. Let me go back to my world. The thing is, we have to change our world if we want to change the world. Right?
Seems uncomfortable to me.
Straight up, it's impossible to address racism in an authentic way without addressing yourself, the harm you've caused, and the grief and loss that white supremacy inherently creates for all. If we want to burn the systems of white supremacy to the ground, and my hope is that's why you're here, we first have to examine ourselves. You need to explore the ways your racism, misogyny, transphobia, homophobia, classism, ableism, and or internalized oppression are embedded in your body and how they infiltrate your every breath and relationship. Racial work mandates we address our own race and oppression-based traumas and the traumas inflicted on humans as a whole, especially queer and trans, black and indigenous women. For it's a form of collective healing for our anger, our shame, and most of all, our grief. Yes, white people are the only ones who can destroy white supremacy and racism. I agree, Gemini.
We're good at destroying stuff.
We are real good, but that one we want to hang on to.
Like world champ destroying stuff.
But for some reason, not this one. We like to fight against this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Investigating our inner child. Healing requires facing our shadow self and our wounded inner child. As we've discussed, all of us have endured some struggle. None of us were loved perfectly as children, and most of us still have childhood hurts and trauma in need of healing, all of which results in a wounded inner child. It is believed that a large part of our character is written in the first 5 years of our lives, and this plays an integral role in how we view and relate to the world. Mix that with the fact that most neuroscientists agree that about 95% of our mind operates in an unconscious level, including those parts storing traumatic memories. I itch. Pardon me. Okay. We come to understand that much of our worldview, including biases, are implicit and thus go unnoticed without intentional inquisition. Oh, good. Your trauma began at 6 months. Oh, God, you can't even remember that, but your body does, and that's awful. It is precisely why we must do the inner work to acknowledge our wounded inner child and our shadow side. Our shadow self is the very much present and often shows itself in inadvertent ways, such as sarcasm, slips of the tongue, dreams, fantasies, oppressive worldviews, and or projections characterized by immediate and intense emotional reactions. Our shadows contain our rage, our jealousy, our criticism, and our ability to cause harm. Oh, yeah. Geez, that good. They need to be good or right. Like how that one, that last night's, that hit hard. Because that is literally my entire life has been spent trying to be good. All the time. Our shadows contain our rage, jealousy, criticism, and ability to cause harm. We need not categorize the shadow as negative or in need of fixing. It's just part of who we are. But issues arise when we refuse to acknowledge and accept those parts of ourselves so that we can ensure that they are addressed and expressed nonviolently. This becomes all the harder when we have not yet acknowledged or addressed our inner child, as our inner child is quick to behave like a toddler in a tantrum. Our inner child is also always present and can provoke self-sabotaging, self-criticizing, passive-aggressive, or violent behaviors. When we acknowledge the harms we endured as a child and the childlike needs still present within us, it creates more compassion for the fullness of who we are, including, if not especially, our shadows. Then we can give ourselves tender care we require to heal our hearts and thus help heal the hearts of others. No matter who you are or where you come from, committing to authentic racial justice requires an upheaval and questioning of everything you once knew, be it about yourself, others, or the world. For white people and other oppressors, it often results in feeling as though the floor is falling out from beneath their feet. Nothing is what they once believed it to be, whether the belief was a form of willful ignorance or not. When we engage in racial justice, it is an investment in witnessing the world beyond the white supremacist status quo, and that has been carefully curated by those with the most power and privilege to keep them powerful and privileged, to the detriment and exclusion of all else. Yeah, The Body Keeps Score is a great book too. That is not one that I have. I do have My Grandmother's Hands. That's probably the one I'm going to read next. This requires a serious act of unlearning and relearning, and depending on your proximity to the oppressor, it can be all-encompassing task. As I have always say in my workshops, when we educate ourselves and begin to witness the world through an authentically anti-racist lens, we detach from the world as we've known it. For my fellow Matrix fans, hey, it is akin to Neo popping that red pill from Morpheus and dissolving the state-sanctioned illusions that he had bought into, and witnessing the world as it truly is. Committing to authentic anti-racism is unplugging from the matrix of white supremacy. It is an act of awakening our hearts and our minds to the racial reality and confronting all the ways we have harmed and or have been harmed within it. As a Black woman, it is deeply painful to come to terms with the omnipresence of white supremacy and the ways that it has resulted in my external and internal oppression. For white folks, the pain of predominantly comes from realizing their racism and how they have been complicit in global systems of dominance. And all of us feel anguish in accepting the ways that we have oppressed other BIPOC women and queer or trans folks as well as ourselves. This is why the inner work is the hardest work we can do. We must face our actions, our privileges, our beliefs, our emotions. We must first face the question ourselves. Fucking scary, right? I love what my bones know. It was easier to hear the first person survivor story. Oh yeah. What, dear?
The guy Ronald D. Moore, the guy who did the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, is doing the Crane Iron Mythology.
Okay.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Okay, awesome.
Remaking it for. Right.
Nice. I think that she was talking about the one that you had suggested, the Body Heap score. I appreciate why pointing to external factors is so damn tempting. Self-growth and personal development are uncomfortable, messy, life-altering, and lifelong commitments. Our desire to avoid pain, change and the work necessitated by growth is so strong. Our ego tries to convince us that we are in a life and death situation and that a change to our worldview or self-identification is the same as facing a lion in the jungle. We get mired in a flight, fight, freeze, or fawn. This shit is no joke. And this is precisely why we must commit to racial justice with all we've got. From the inside out, if we are not addressing the shadow self that resides within each of us, how can we expect to bring those facets of ourselves into the light for our personal and collective healing? Doing the work, deep inner work, to connect with our inner child, our shadow selves and unconscious, is imperative for addressing the inner harms that may be impairing our ability to show up for ourselves and others, as well as illuminate the oppressive behaviors formed in early childhood. As Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, which we will. The later procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. White supremacy has us operating from head over heart, such that making the darkness conscious is an inconceivable task. We have been conditioned to fear ourselves, our emotions, our hearts. Boy, I know that. I remember very Mitch talking about how I could tell that something was broken. I didn't know what it was, and it scared me to even think of looking at it because I was so afraid of what I would find. It felt like I was carrying a monster around. Ding, ding, ding. Thank you, Lizzie. Our emotions, our hearts. When we are unable to access our intuition or acknowledge our feelings, we cannot show ourselves kindness, let alone those with an experience entirely different from our own. Yeah, because we don't have empathy if we can't connect with ourselves. We are rewarded when we move from the rational logic-based or scientific spaces and reprimanded when we operate from intuitive, emotional, spiritual, and the unknown. Leaning into our emotional intuition is deemed irrational, unworthy of trust. There is good reason why so many of us, especially women, are terrified to reveal our own shit, tap into our intuitive knowledge, and heal our hearts. It can feel like emotional, if not physical, death. from many of our ancestors, it has. If you believe in past lives, I do, and perhaps you yourself have been oppressed or otherwise burned in the at the stake for embodying your emotions. I don't know if I believe in past lives, but you know,
I do.
I'll have to talk to my husband about that. Apparently, I got some discovery to do, and I'm excited. This is precisely why spiritual activism, invoking spirit, and partaking in culturally informed practices to help us face our shadow, better withstand our discomfort, and transmute our pain so that we can fight racial oppression and contribute in raising the collective consciousness. Oh, nice. Well, apparently you're not alone. We've got a Gemini believes, and Cece does too. I don't know what to believe, but I am excited to learn. It is so damned vital. It gets to the root of our individual and shared evils. It is how we personally and collectively get and stay free. And I'm going to have to stop right there because I got 19 seconds left, and it is time for my date. Hi. I get to go on a date. But I wanted to make sure I got my reading in for today. So thanks for joining me, guys. We will pick up tomorrow and continue on with our chapter 2. Thanks. We're going to a comedy show, and I love comedy shows, so probably around the same time. It seems to be about 5:30, between 5:30 and 6. I'll pop in. We'll do our reading. We'll have time to talk tomorrow. Just not tonight. So that's all right. Put a pin in your thoughts. Write them in your journal. You're in New York. Oh, so it's 8 o'clock there right now. So I'm 2 hours behind you because I'm in Mountain Time. So, all right, friends. Happy Saturday. Stay good. No, you know, as good as you should be. Go cause some good trouble and have fun.